Jeff down here at Rythmia. Today we have a very cool webinar happening this evening at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And what it's going to be about is ayahuasca and PTSD. Now, a lot of people ask me, what is ayahuasca good for? And I say, well, a lot of things. But one main thing it's good for, it's to help people resolve the emotions associated in their life that are a result of trauma that they've had in the past. So that's a condition called PTSD. And in the military, they've shifted that diagnosis to remove the D. So it's post-traumatic stress instead of calling it a disorder. So I agree with the military on that. And it's a condition and something you can resolve and you can get past. Now, who has PTSD? Well, does everybody that has trauma have PTSD? Nope, they don't. Not everybody. Trauma happens to all of us, but the effects of that trauma emotionally on us later in life depends on the person, depends on what the trauma was, depends on how severe the trauma was for that person. So I went through a lot of traumatic things in my childhood and in my life, but I don't have PTSD right now because I've resolved it. And the emotions from back then that I didn't have time to deal with because I was trying to survive, they're not affecting me right now, at least not in a way that's really significant. Now, has those events shaped me into who I am? Yes, absolutely. But they're not currently making me sad or anxious or reach out for substances or do things that are negative for me. So, however, there are a lot of us out in the world. There's tons of people, especially military, that do have PTSD, and their emotions that were not felt back during war are surfacing now, and they're uncomfortable, and they're making them not trust people, and they're making them not open up, and they're making them not live life that's to the fullest of what they would like. And those of us that aren't in the military also have PTSD because we went through a very horrible event or a traumatic childhood or an abusive environment. And what could be one-time event happened, like, for example, the 9/11 disaster, that caused a lot of PTSD for a lot of people. That was a one-time event. And then other people have an era of their life, like 10 years, 15 years, that was traumatic and brutal, and they have PTSD from that. So how does ayahuasca actually help people with PTSD? Like, how does it work? Well, if you're in a traumatic moment and you have emotions there present, what do you think those emotions are? If you're being abused or scared or in a fight or something that's happening to you or you're involved in, what do you think those emotions are that are happening right then? Well, they're probably fear, they're probably confusion, they're probably anger, they're probably sometimes empathy, even guilt and shame. There's a lot of emotions that are present during a traumatic event. Now, what happens with those emotions is your body kicks into a fight or flight response. And your body has to either run away to be safe or fight to be safe. And so in order to do those things, you need blood to go into your extremities so you can fight and you can do stuff. And then you need it to go into the core so you can run and protect your vital organs. So there's all this different blood flow stuff happening. But what's also happening is the emotions that are present are locking you up. And so we got to get those emotions out of the way so you can run or you can fight or you can think quick and survive. So those emotions get pushed away into the amygdala part of the brain. And that's where they sit and they stay in there. I like to say it's like a locked up chest in the attic. And that's where all your emotions are going. And then you survive and you get past this event. And then you're 10 years later and you start to get anxious and you can't sleep and you're having nightmares and you don't trust people and your relationships are falling apart. You're like, what's going on? Well, those emotions that you never felt are starting to creep out of that chest in the attic, and they're leaking out into your life and into your consciousness. So how does ayahuasca help with this? Well, what ayahuasca does is it adjusts something called the sigma-1 receptor. And the sigma-1 receptor is located in various parts of the cell membrane and of our neurons. And what they do is they allow for a very complicated biochemical neurological process. They allow for an anti-amnesia component to happen, meaning that if you had trauma, you blocked it and you repressed memories. And so what this receptor does is it unlocks those memories. It's very involved. Sigma-1 is very involved in synaptic plasticity, meaning the adjustment of neuron pathways that you've used to block and push away emotion because it was really painful and really scary and really hard, and you didn't want to deal with it in that moment. We don't blame you because you had to survive. So when you drink ayahuasca, those emotions get tapped into and those memories get unlocked and they surface. And then they go into what's called the default mode network of your brain, because lately you've been ruminating in that default mode network. And those are various regions of your brain that have to do with your own consciousness, your own view of yourself, your own view of the world, other people, what you view they might be thinking about you, and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like where your brain just kind of sits and rests at. And in that space, lately, you've been ruminating and obsessing and thinking about a bunch of negative stuff. I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. I'm defective. I've got a problem. And that's starting to manifest, and it's really upsetting. And so that's related to oftentimes trauma, abandonment, neglect, abuse from childhood or from an event that occurred, even recently. So what happens is those emotions you unlock through the Sigma-1 epigenetic process with ayahuasca creeps into the default mode network. And then you can see, wait a minute, I'm not a bad person. I see that I had some fear that I had to go through because I was in this abusive environment, or I see this anger that I had because I was upset at somebody or something was happening. And I can feel those things, and I can revisit some of those emotions to process them out and have a different perspective on them. Because, I have 5 kids. So like my kids, I got a newborn who's 4 months old. So, and I got a 4-year-old now, he just turned 5. So if I asked him right now what he thinks about an observation of the zoo, he would tell me about the zoo and what the zoo looks like. But if I asked him when he was 25 years old, what'd you think about that zoo back then? He would have a totally different perspective because he'd have a more mature perspective. He would have a different view of the zoo, how he remembered it. And so that's kind of like how this is. Like you get to take a look at those emotions that you had when you were young that you didn't process. You get to look at them in a more mature, evolved way, hopefully, and from a different perspective that helps you resolve them. So, ayahuasca is a very interesting modality to help people overcome all kinds of emotional situations. But one of the biggest ones, and what we're going to talk about tonight in a webinar that we have, is this situation with PTSD and how it actually works. So I look forward to seeing you guys on the webinar. And if not, come down to Costa Rica, because this is exactly the type of stuff we're working with on with the guests. And we have a whole new set of guests every week, and they're working on these types of issues: trauma, anxiety, depression. They're working on all kinds of amazing things to help them move forward in life in an empowered way. Rythmia is a program. We're not an ayahuasca center. We're a program that helps you improve your life. And one of the modalities we use is ayahuasca. We also use breath work. We also use super healthy food. We have classes. We teach you how to set intentions. We have meditation. We have yoga every morning. We have a hydrocolonic cleanse and spa and body work and volcanic mud. And it's just this beautiful place. And the people that come here do very well. 97% of them report at the end of the week that they got what they came for. That's incredible. Back in LA, in the healthcare places I worked at, we were lucky to get 12% of improvement or 12% success or 10 or 5. And it was just, kind of normal for healthcare. What's the success rate of an inpatient program? 5%, 10%. That's kind of like the industry standard for places. Rythmia, self-reported, the guest report, 97%. That's incredible. That's no lie. That is an amazing statistic. That's why I've decided to live here, because I want to see this happening every week that I'm alive. I want to be involved with the people that come here. It's a beautiful process. So I look forward to meeting you. Hopefully we'll see you in Costa Rica soon. Pura vida. Thanks for watching. See you.